we're taught that careers are a ladder, right? And careers are not like that at all. It's like a random connection of dots all over the place. What I think about is these random points, some high, some low, some left, some right, on a graph. And on that graph, if you start to connect the dots, it does not look like a ladder. It looks like a roller coaster. And sometimes that roller coaster is really fun. And you're like, this is the best roller coaster ever. I'm having a blast. I'm at the peak. And then sometimes it's a terror. And you're like, oh my goodness, how and when am I going to get off this ride?
Welcome to Marketing Your Way podcast, a show for women in marketing and creative fields who are ready to rethink what's next. I'm your host, Anastasia Mann, marketing strategist, agency owner, career mentor, and once upon a time, a corporate VP of marketing. This is your go-to space for career reinvention, whether that means launching your own business, pivoting into freelance, or finding a role that finally feels like a fit. Each week, I bring you honest stories, actionable strategies, and mindset tools to help you move forward with clarity and confidence. We'll also dive into what's actually working in marketing right now, from personal branding and client acquisition to AI tools and emerging trends shaping the future of our industry. And just in case you're wondering, yes, this podcast comes with a Ukrainian accent and a whole lot of straight talk, because it's time to build a career that works for you. Let's dive in. Have you ever climbed the career ladder, checked all the boxes for success, and still felt like something was missing? My guest today, Kathleen Ross, knows that feeling, and she did something about it. Kathleen is an award-winning marketing executive who has worked with some of the world's most iconic brands, from Vera Wang to BMW to MONAT and Sugar Bear Vitamins. Her career spans publishing, luxury fashion, beauty and wellness, and today she is a fractional CMO, mentor, and keynote speaker, helping women redefine success on their own terms. In this episode, we dive into why the career ladder is a lie for so many ambitious women, Kathleen's transition from publishing and events to leading global marketing teams, the lessons burnout taught her, and how she built a career that finally fits her life, how AI can amplify creativity for marketers and teams without replacing it, why curiosity, scrappiness, and raising your hand for new opportunities are the keys to leadership. And yes, you'll even hear about her secret creative outlet, tap dancing. If you ever wonder what's on the other side of doing everything right, this conversation will inspire you to create a career and life on your own terms. Welcome, Kathleen. I'm so happy to have you here with us today on Marketing Your Way podcast. How are you doing today?
I am so excited. This is the highlight of my day, and I've been looking forward to talking to you. We had such a great connection when we first met, and really excited about what you're creating here with this podcast.
Thank you so much. Let's get started. So, what is one thing about you that people wouldn't know from reading your LinkedIn profile?
Ooh, I have lots of things that people wouldn't know about me from my LinkedIn profile. Starting with that, I was a tap dancer. I still tap dance a little, so that's always my fun fact, my party trick fun fact. But I think it's so funny because LinkedIn shows the profile, the professional highlights, right? But you wouldn't know probably that I grew up in Massachusetts from my LinkedIn. You wouldn't know that I'm very into whole foods and plant-based diet. You wouldn't know that I was a dancer. I still perform. So many fun things. But the tap dancer always gets everybody excited.
I love that. My daughter, who's 1.5, has little tap dance shoes. So I cannot wait for her to try them on. This is so much fun. I need to get the invitation for that performance. Okay.
Yes, I know. My next one will probably be in October. But yeah, I perform still probably about 4 or 5 times a year, fully recreational, and that is my safe space. Dance has become my safe space, my serenity, the place where I go where I can not think about anything else but what's right in front of me, which is usually the choreography. And I always find like dance to be such a good practice in meditation, because meditation, there's this concept of like one pointed focus, right? And it's like you can only focus on one specific thing. Well, dance is the same when you're learning choreography, because I promise you, if you think about anything else besides like, what is my body doing? What is the teacher doing? Am I looking correct when I do this thing? You will mess up. So you are forced to be fully focused. And so that's why I love dance. It's been a huge part of my life. And I took some time off, and I'm so glad that I'm back dancing.
That's so beautiful. The podcasting for me is my creative outlet. It's definitely a little less movement. I still sit while doing it, but that's another thing where you have to be fully present.
Yes. We need things that are not so business focused, you know? I mean, you have to have something where it's like you can play, you can learn, you can mess up a little, you can make mistakes, you have a totally set of new people that you're interacting with. I think this is really important for our careers, for our brains, for our development, us as creative being, as women, to be able to do something outside of work. So, I know we're going to talk a lot about work, but I hope everyone's also making sure that they're pouring into their creative selves, because that's a huge part of what's been able to sustain a career like you have had and that I've had as well.
Exactly. Sometimes it's hard for us to disconnect, especially as business owners, that you can have hobbies outside of what you're doing, and not everything needs to make money. You really have to do some things for fun without thinking that this is going to be some type of income producing activity.
Absolutely.
And that being said, you worked in so many different industries. You've been in publishing, you've been in fashion, you worked with luxury brands. So which chapter shaped your creative approach the most?
I think they've all added to my creative approach throughout the years. I want to say the publishing, which was my foundation where I really started my career, really helped set me up, because I was in the editorial department, but I was also in the events and marketing department. So I was straddling two very different concepts. But in the publishing industry, we didn't have a lot of budget. And same thing when I was in school. So I feel like when I was able to learn how to create with very tight restraints, it actually helped me create in my future when I actually have the budgets to do all the things that I wanted to do. But sometimes in our creative approach, we get really limited with like, oh, I don't have enough money. Oh, I don't have enough this. We don't have enough people. It's not possible. And starting out my career in a place where we actually had no budget, it was like, we have $0. You're making the cocktails. You're writing the invites. You're doing everything. You have to leverage. You have to use your leverage. You have to use your creative mind. That really did help me develop the creative skill to not get stuck in, I don't have this, I don't have that. And then when it comes to like my creative leadership and my creative management, that came later on, probably when I worked in the jewelry company, just because I had an amazing female leader who I just became kind of someone that I idolized and really wanted to inspire my career so much of, wow, that's how I want to lead. So that's where I honed like creative leadership, was learning from another great leader. But when it comes to like my actual creative approach, I like to kind of start with, these big brainstorms of what could be possible without having to think about, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. And then you shimmy it down into, okay, now how are we going to execute,
I love that. I think that when you start a business, it's very similar, right? Because when you're going from a corporate world to owning your own agency and starting it, you're going from a budget where, as a marketing person, you would just request, okay, I need this tool, I need this software, I need, this type of support. And the companies usually approve and provide all of that to you. When you start a business, you're like, okay, so I have to pay for all of this now?
Yeah.
What is happening? Without even having to rent a space, my credit card bill is $1,200 just based on the software alone. And I'm like, wow, this is very intense. So I'm sure that you took a lot from the publishing world into your business as well.
Yeah. Yeah, being scrappy, I learned that early. And I have to tell you, I've worked for companies where you have $11 million budgets, and I have 100, multi-million dollar teams, 100 people around the world, like working on my team. And even if you're in corporate, being scrappy is always valuable. So I really always have treated the money that I've had for corporate teams and in my own business as my own. That all came from publishing when we were producing events with literally $0. So
Yes. So how did you transition from editorial and events into marketing leadership roles?
yeah, well, I always had side hustles. So when I was in college, I actually started my own business. I had a freelance design agency, and then I started an agency that was PR, marketing, events, all sorts of things with a business partner of mine who's still a great friend of mine to this day. So even though I was doing internships and then getting jobs in the publishing industry as art director and events manager, my events and marketing knowledge all came from having my own side hustle and my own business then. So I went to school for graphic design. I didn't have a really super traditional track. And I think having all these different side hustles throughout the years where I would become really enamored with the chief styling officer or the head of the fashion director. I became completely enamored with the fashion director. And I was like, wow, this person's amazing. I learned from them. So I would become a stylist on the weekend, volunteering with the stylist. And then I would go and learn from somebody else who was doing something else in event marketing. So I was always, my weekends and nights were always filled with other projects. So the event marketing was the first step because I was already producing events. I was already producing swim week shows back in the day when Mercedes-Benz was still the title sponsor of Swim Week. That's how long ago this was. And I was producing all these events and doing marketing on my own. And then the company, the publishing company I was working with, got wind of it. And this amazing director of sales and publisher, assistant publisher, saw that I was doing this on the side and said, hey, wait, we could use you in-house doing this. So that's how I had this really weird marketing and editorial role at the same time. And then from there, I started to learn more and more about marketing because I already knew the design side. So I already knew about designing emails. I already knew about all the branding aspect. And then in my own business, I was learning how to actually drive marketing for small businesses in the fashion industry. And then someone saw it within one of these companies, was like, hey, we can leverage you in doing that. And that's how I kind of I got poached from one company to the other to go and be the marketing manager at Modern Luxury down in Miami. So it was an unusual track. In summary, it was all my side hustles and the relationships that I built and people seeing potential in me and saying, you could do this, and learning from great leaders who also saw my potential and said, hey, we can teach her a few things. She'll learn it on her own. I would go, this is when Facebook and Instagram and all these things were just starting. So we were all learning as we go. So that's how I kind of transitioned into marketing roles. And then the rest was history between creative marketing, brand marketing. It all just kind of flowed based on what people saw my potential, and I rose to the occasion.
It is so important to pick your hand up every time there is an opportunity to learn something new. And the more I talk and interview women like you, the more the track of these careers that people build, especially when they're in like the director and CMO roles, are usually for the people who are willing to get their hands dirty and do the job that other people don't really want to do. I actually talked to someone yesterday and they mentioned that when the marketing automations just started and companies like Marketo came along, no one really wanted to learn that from the marketing world. They're like, okay, this is our job description. This is what I do. And I don't really switch lanes here. And she picked up her hand, and that was a trigger for her, this huge marketing career that she built, because she realized the more she learns from different departments, from things that other people do not want to do, the higher ranked she will be in the company, and that will open up doors. And that was huge. So the fact that you had all these different side hustles and you were multi-passionate opened up many doors. And that's why your career is not lenient. It's not like, okay, I went from marketing coordinator to manager, director, and so long and so forth.
But it brings such a good point, because that's actually the same mentality I have about leadership is I want to know about I've actually had almost every single role within a marketing career, especially within creative marketing. I can confidently say I have had every single job that I ever managed in a creative department. So by being curious, by getting my hands dirty in all these different areas, it made me a better leader because I have an understanding of what it takes to develop that type of creative talent or that type of marketing talent. But when it comes to your leadership approach, showing the way is the way that I lead. If the trash needs to be taken out at the end of the day at the photo shoot, I'm going to take it out. We don't have a maid on the set of the photo shoot. Maybe we do sometimes we don't. I want my team to see me doing that work because that's my expectation also for them. So it's almost in a humility as well. It's like showing the way, but also this humility to say, I'm not too good to do any job on this team. I'm continually learning. I'm continually raising my hand up. I'm the first one to say, I don't know. I need to go and learn this. And that's what I want everybody else on my team to do as well. And I think we find that in almost every leader, especially those who we admire, is like they have this craving for learning, this craving to learn, to do something new. And then they expect that from their team as well. And that's how people rise to the occasion.
Let's talk about email marketing. If you're over clunky platforms and wasting hours designing emails, it's time for a change. Meet Flowdesk, the easiest, most beautiful email marketing tool out there. Stunning templates, simple automation, no limits on subscribers or emails. And the best part? You get 50% off your first year. That's just $19 a month. Grab your deal now at marketingyourwaypodcast.com/Flowdesk. It's marketingyourwaypodcast.com/FLODESK. You worked with some of the most world iconic brands. Could you please give us a little bit of take what brands you worked with and how that shaped who you are now and what you do?
I have gotten to work with some of the coolest brands, and that started early in my career in publishing. So some of my career clients that I still talk about were some of my clients in publishing. And so we were either creating event experiences for LVMH fragrances, or later in my career, I got to work with every major retailer from Saks Fifth Avenue to Walmart to Macy's when I was working at the Richline Group, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company, which is very quietly the largest producer, distributor of fine jewelry in the world, or at least was when I worked there. So I got to work with so many different brands. I got to work with Vera Wang. I got to work with Kettle One. I got to work with BMW, with Cadillac, a lot of events and experiential marketing, but then later as a private label brander within the big box retailers. So I love brands. I love the psychology of branding. I think that especially as we continue on, the branding keeps getting larger and larger and it becomes community and experience. And I think that what's fascinating to me so much still is the psychology. What are all the small things that people sometimes think are a little flowery, right? What visual communication, what standardization of a brand looks like. But that really fascinates me on how a brand can maintain consistency, but also still have this breath and this life. So I can't pick a favorite brand that I've ever worked with. But there's so many that have really gotten me excited and made me truly love the career that I've built working in branding, because I see it a lot as like commercial art and commercial expression of a movement. I really like to think very deeply about the branding that I do and the work that I do. Being able to work with so many different diverse brands has taught me a lot about what's possible.
Yes. Absolutely. Could you give us a little bit of a background, what you did at MONAT? I know that was one of up-and-coming brands.
Yes, that was such a hallmark, incredible experience of mine. I had never worked in direct sales before, and I met with the president at the time, and I had an incredible leader who found me and they recruited me, and I came in for the interview and I was like thinking, I don't really know about this. What is this? I had heard about it a little bit, but I wasn't really sure about direct sales. And I just fell in love with the product, with the brand, with the opportunity, and I learned so much. I think in terms of accelerated career growth. I've worked in quite a few experiences where it was extremely high pressure. I think working in the magazines was extremely high pressure. I worked a tremendous amount, producing so many different events a year. And that all kind of led to this experience that I had working in the beauty industry. And it was a skyrocket experience. We launched so many new products. It was wildly successful. I worked with so many incredibly talented people who I still am very grateful to call friends. And it was high pressure when a company grows like that throughout my entire experience. When you go from in the $100 million range to almost $1 billion in a couple years, it is a wild ride. This is not something where you're saying, I only work 9 to 5 and things like that. That was not my experience. That was not my experience at any of my jobs, but that was certainly not my experience in a company that's in hyper growth. And it was such a pleasure. I had the best time. We created so many cool things. The events were spectacular. The team was incredible. It was amazing to get to see something that I worked so hard on grow so quickly. So I have so much love for my time there. And it's still something that I carry with a lot of great pride and feel has been a big part of my career. So that was a really cool experience. I went from being the creative director, quickly promoted to senior creative director and vice president of global brand marketing. So it was definitely a wild ride, but something that was very cool. And it was neat to experience something different. You know, I had worked in direct to consumer. I had worked in publishing. I had worked for manufacturing companies and private label branding. And I remember calling my dad when I was taking the interview, and because it was the first direct sales companies I ever worked for. And I was like, what do you think about this? Is this something I should do? You hear stuff on the line. What is that all about? And he's like, it's just going to make you a stronger marketer. It's more diversity to your experience. So I'm really glad that I took the leap of faith, and I get to work with a lot of direct sales brands still now in my consulting work. And I've grown to really love it. I think it was a great experience and certainly taught me a lot.
So take us a little bit back, and the moment that you realized that you are done with corporate world and you would like to start something on your own. When was that trigger that inspired you to do this?
I think being an entrepreneur early in my career, I always had the bug. I call it that little itch where it's kind of like, I loved my corporate career. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. It gave me so many opportunities. I wouldn't be able to do the consulting work that I do now if I didn't have my corporate career. I wouldn't be able to consult if I didn't have that. However, I feel like there was always something that was pushing me to go after something else. And I had worked in so many different types of industry. I worked for incredible brands that have grown so big. And I really got to the point where I said, I want to have a little bit more control over who I work with. And I want to have a little bit more impact at a greater scale for more than one brand at a time, because I had gone in-house and was really only working on one brand for quite a few years. And that was an incredible experience because I got to see these hyper growth, skyrocketing incredible brands grow on a global scale. And at the same time, I thought, wow, I could help a lot more companies and a lot more people. And so that was kind of the itch that was always there. And I was always starting side projects. Okay. I always had something going on. If I was starting a YouTube channel, if I was learning this, I was learning that. I was dancing as a side project. Sometimes I produced some of those shows with the studio that I dance at. So I think it was just kind of a natural flow. I wouldn't say that I'm done with corporate because a lot of my clients are corporate, but it just gives me a lot more flexibility. And the greatest gift that I think I have in this experience is getting to choose who I work with and what the terms are. That doesn't mean that I work less. It doesn't mean that it's any easier. And I think that's a huge myth. I think it's quite problematic that we tell people like, yeah, just quit your corporate job and start a freelance career. Like, okay, yeah, let me know how that works. Like there's a huge learning curve. And I'm somebody who's started multiple businesses throughout my career. So finding your product market fit, learning how to change is a big deal. But my corporate life set me up in my contacts and the skills that I've learned and honed and developed. It set me up to go fractional and be a consultant. it would have been a lot harder had I not had this foundational network, this foundational skill set that I was able to hone in my corporate career.
Absolutely agree with that. I'm listening to you and I have flashbacks to my own life, because every time that I was within the same company for many years, for like 8+ years, and I did do the ranks, right? I started as an assistant, coordinator, manager, director, VP. So I did the whole thing, and,
Wow.
and switched different industries in between within the real estate world. But at the same time, it was very lenient growth. But I've always wanted to learn something new. So I listen to podcasts, always been into self-development. And I've always had that itch. I knew that there was something out there. And then I started my agency, and that was a great gift. I am very grateful for all the clients I work with. A lot of them I knew from the corporate world as well. So I still work with them, and I wouldn't be able to do that without having the corporate career, of course. But at the same time, that I thought that that was the solution. But now I have an agency. I love it. I love what I do. But I still started a podcast completely unassociated with the agency life. Yes, I put a lot of energy in this, but it's rewarding. I love what I do, and it makes me better at the agency as well, because I learned from amazing women. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but being your own boss is a little isolating sometimes. So unless you build the community of other people around you, yes, you have a team, but it's a little different from having a full-on corporate team as before. So having all these outlets really helps your career and your growth.
Yeah. It was one of the hardest things, I think, going from the corporate experience and leading big teams. And a lot of my purpose was for the team. I almost get emotional thinking about it, because I remember when I first went fully consultant, I would wake up and there would be no team for me there. Like I woke up every day in my corporate career to share a song with my team, to connect, to see what we were going to do. I just felt like we were always kind of like in this together. And then I woke up, and my first 6 months was rough. Like, it was hard to get out of bed sometimes, because I was like, oh, no one's waiting for me. And that sounds like a little weird the way it comes out, but it wasn't about me. It was about serving others. And I didn't have that built in the same way that I had it in corporate. So I had to build that sense of network, of community outside of my corporate life. And that was one of the more difficult things. Certainly there's all the tactical stuff of like, how do I get the clients, and, what are you going to charge, and all this stuff. There's all that stuff, but the stuff that I don't hear as much about is what I hear about people talking about building your own community, which is so important. I'm so grateful to be connected.
Absolutely. Yes. To that point, I remember starting this podcast, and the idea that I had originally kind of evolved after a few interviews. I think it was 6 interviews in where I'm like, I don't think this podcast is only for people who want to go freelance or start their own business, because it is not for everyone. It is not for everyone to build this career and wear all these different hats at the same time, because for some people, the life balance and happiness and everything is built on the corporate foundations. That's what they like. They don't want to have a stress over how to find clients. How do I do payroll? How do I go after somebody who is not paying their bills? And things like that, that we've never really had to do during the corporate life in the marketing department. So it's definitely an interesting subject, and it is not for everyone. But building a career around your life and around your values is for everyone. So that's why this podcast is about finding a job that you really like within the marketing department, or maybe outside the marketing department. Also finding a company that sees your value, and also your values are aligned as a company.
There's a phrase that says, learn on someone else's dime. It's kind of not the nicest phrase, but I do think that you, especially starting out your career, should work at a corporate job. I think you're going to learn so much. You're going to start your side hustle 100%, go for it. But the network that you're going to build, the support system that you're going to have, can totally set you up for the future of success, being successful on your own. If you're gung-ho about starting your own company, awesome. But that doesn't make working inside of a company any less valuable. And I think there's a little bit too much hype around entrepreneurism with a little too little realistic expectation of what your life is going to be like. You're going to work more than 9 to 5. I worked more than 9 to 5 every corporate job. I work way more than 9 to 5 in my own business if I want to be successful. So choose what makes sense for you, but like, let's be honest about what it's actually like, and let's not shame people for wanting to have a perfectly wonderful, awesome life working in a corporate company.
Exactly. I work with a lot of realtors. So a lot of people start a real estate business for a wrong reason, where they say they want to have flexibility and they want to have their own schedule and all of that. And you're like, oh, that's really funny, because you have zero flexibility and definitely you don't work on your own schedule. You work on your client's schedule. So yes, starting a business is that. But at the same time, it does give you a little more flexibility. Like, based on where you are in life. Right now, I don't start my work until about 10:30, just because I have a little baby at home. And by the time that my help gets there and I get ready for work day, it is 10:30. And I kind of learned how to just be okay with that and knowing that's when my day starts. And if I have to finish at 3:30 to pick up my older daughter, that's okay as well. So,
and do you get online late at night sometimes?
I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And yesterday I woke up because I needed to record a podcast. And I woke up at 6 a.m. to do that. And then the baby started crying. So I did it late at night, and it is what it is, right? So you kind of, you figure out what works for you. I just learned not to get bogged down by those little things. Yes, in my mind, in perfect world, it will happen that way, but I just go with the punches. I'm sure you do too. A quick break to let you know, if you are craving real conversations about what's actually working in marketing and what's not, come join us inside the Marketing Your Way community. It's a free space for women in marketing and creative roles who want to grow, connect, and explore what's next in their careers. Inside the group, we share industry news, unpack trends, explore how different roles are using AI to simplify and streamline their work, and we bounce ideas around from campaign strategies to career shifts. Whether you are freelancing, leading a team, or quietly wondering what else might be out there, you'll find women here who get it. Go to marketingyourwaypodcast.com/community or tap the link in the show notes to join us. I can't wait to see you inside. So let's talk a little bit about burnout. And I know that it's a word that so many women can relate to. How did you recognize it in yourself, and what did it teach you?
Well, I'm a professional burnout. I burnt out 3 times in my short 15 plus year career. The first time was I was up for a promotion at one of the publishing companies I worked at. My boss quit a week before I had planned to quit. And so there was my promotion, right? And I walked away from that job because I was so burnt out. I was exhausted. I was jaded. I was not feeling myself. And I wasn't my best self anymore. I had given a lot to the job, and the job had certainly taught me a lot, but I had produced over 100 events a year, and it was a lot, and I was ready for something new. So I quit my job with a one-way ticket to India with my now husband, then boyfriend, and traveled Europe, traveled Eastern Asia for maybe about 3.5 months, went all over, got reinvigorated, was completely terrified most of the time that I was totally screwed up my career by doing this, because this was at the time not very common either. I had read the book, one of Tim Ferriss's book, I think The 4-Hour Work Week or something like that. And went to the Himalayas, learned how to teach yoga, and was like, okay, I'm going to live in an ashram in India now, and I'm going to go back and never go back to the corporate world, and I'm only going to teach yoga. And that didn't end up happening. And I was able to kind of like take a good break and build back up my life. Happened again at my next job. Somehow got back into corporate, worked like for, a couple year sprint, and then burnt out in that. And then another one-way ticket. Halfway through that trip, I was in Egypt interviewing for a job while in Egypt, making up fake phone numbers for the US, like buying US phone numbers on eSIMs so that I could talk to the companies in the US. So anyway, I've done it a lot. Usually my burnout has looked like work crazy for a job, completely burn out, have some form of like, mental, physical, like just exhaustion, and then quit my job with no plan and then figure it out. So like my career has not been linear at all. So recognizing burnout now, like it got more serious over the years. The last time it was like, a major health problem. I had like a panic attack. Like I never had a panic attack, had a horrible panic attack at work. And it was during the pandemic, the pressure was extremely high and I didn't know what was happening in my body. And it was like a huge wake up call where the doctor was like, you're so stressed, you're actually making yourself go into this panic state. It's psychological. It's the environment that you're putting yourself in. You need to find outlets to manage your stress. And so that was like a couple of jobs back. And, I would listen to it a little bit and work on my health a little bit and then get back into what I call work warp, which is, an intense stretch of work and really, work until 3:00 in the morning, working like a crazy person. But a lot of what I'm trying to build with my consulting career is that balance that I wasn't able to get in the corporate world. If I could have done things differently, I would have just taken the spin class. I would have stopped and take the dance class, put my phone down for meditation for 5 minutes. We already know the science says that it can help us to do so. So I think that burnout is a very common thing. I think I went to the absolute extremes of it. And I think a lot of people in my circle, especially like other women that I know who work in corporate, have also done that. And thinking about my career longer term, if I would have backed out instead of been so obsessed with have to be a VP at 30, have to be a CMO by 35, have to have all these things, like so obsessed with collecting all these accolades. If I would have thought about like a more sustainable career and actually given myself the time to rest, I would have been able to do it for longer. Now, it's kind of hard for me too, because at the same time, like results show that they worked. I was never penalized for working too hard at any of the jobs that I ever worked at. So it's a tough thing to discuss, but to really like tell people don't work that hard. But I would say like, think about it for longer term and take your health very seriously.
The funny part was me moving from New York and to Miami, and people telling me that, oh, Miami is so laid back. People are so relaxed. It's definitely not like New York. You'll see. I did notice a few things like going to Publix and it takes really long time to get your cold cuts and things like that. So yes, I see the laid back situation
Island
there,
time. Yeah.
island time. But at the same time, I started working for the real estate company and it was so intense, like intense to a point we had to come in during the weekends. And when we were pitching a project, it was like this crazy hours, staying up till 1:00 in the morning, coming back to the office at 8:00 in the morning the next day, etc. So it's like, I don't know, what are you talking about? There is no laid back there. Like everyone is so busy, but at some point it's on us and what we create around us and what we think is normal. And I saw other people and other women in the company work this hours and I thought it was normal. And I thought that that was okay to do until you realize and go a few years in and you're like, I think that there are other ways to do this. We are not saving lives in marketing. And it shouldn't give you so much stress. It shouldn't put you in panic attack because you didn't meet a deadline and someone didn't get a flyer on time. I'm sorry. Like that is the fact that I'm talking, to myself 10 years ago. Like, hey, like this was not a matter of you crying over a flyer that wasn't delivered. But at the same time, as you said, that would get you promoted, that would get you
Right.
noticed.
Do you know any female CMO who didn't work like that? I don't, not even female. I don't know any executive who wasn't, I don't know any executive who doesn't work like that. Maybe it's just everybody I know also works like a maniac, but I don't know anybody who ever got promoted to the senior executive levels who wasn't like, hey, there may be a time that you need to be available at the weekend. You may need to work weekends in your job. You know, certainly there's more extremes than others, but do you know anybody who didn't work like that?
No. No, and I'm
Yeah.
curious to see the corporate world in like 20 years because
Mm.
right now it's Gen Zs and I feel like they
Yeah.
really like to stay within their lane. They don't want to do
Yeah.
anything extra. Not everybody, but
Maybe they'll save us. Maybe they'll save us. I don't know. I don't know. But they still are dealing with us. And we had to, I try to make it better for everybody else than my experience. I think that like the women and people who came for us before us tried to do that for me as well. But yeah, it will be very interesting to see how this like current generational clash that we have going on right now will end up. Hey, maybe with AI, we'll be able to do a lot less work and balance things more, but I don't know if I think that's going to happen or not.
let's talk about email marketing. If you're over clunky platforms and wasting hours designing emails, it's time for a change. Meet Flowdesk, the easiest, most beautiful email marketing tool out there. Stunning templates, simple automation, no limits on subscribers or emails. And the best part? You get 50% off your first year. That's just $19 a month. Grab your deal now at marketingyourwaypodcast.com/flowdesk. It's marketingyourwaypodcast.com/FLODESK. So when we first met and we had our coffee chat, you mentioned something about the lie of the career letter. What do you mean by that?
We've kind of started to talk a little bit about it, especially because you hear about my career, but I think we're taught that careers are a ladder, right? And it's steps, right? Think of it as like a staircase and you step up and then there's like a little plane and then you step up to the next job and then there's a little plane and it's like a staircase, right? And careers are not like that at all. At least my experience was not. It's like a random connection of dots all over the place. And even if you did work like the specific job that was exactly, I did everything this step, this step, this step, there were other factors that helped you get there. Almost everybody I know doesn't have a completely traditional track. And I certainly didn't. What I think about is these random points, some high, some low, some left, some right on a graph. And on that graph, if you start to connect the dots, it does not look like a ladder. It's not clearly like this job then led me to this, then it's connecting the dots and it looks like a curly cue. It looks like a roller coaster. And sometimes that roller coaster is really fun. And you're like, this is the best roller coaster ever. I'm having a blast. I'm at the peak. And then sometimes it's a terror. And you're like, oh my goodness, how and when am I going to get off this ride? And you know, it's a little bit perspective of how you look at it, but I think we get so fixated on, I have to do everything right. I have to do this thing, this thing. And when I look back at my career, the random YouTube that I started, the person that I met on the plane, the things that made no sense that I was doing at the time, like quitting my job and moving to India and getting a yoga teacher training, ended up helping me get the next job. The next job that I had, which I made 3 times my salary before, the VP who hired me was a yoga teacher. And she saw, I don't really recommend everybody do this, but I had yoga teacher on my resume at the time and she connected to that. So I think like, stop putting so much pressure on ourselves for everything to be perfect, for it to be this perfect career ladder. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be this amalgamation of random things that were not so random, but things that you do that create the career. Stop thinking so much about the individual dot, the individual step. Start zooming back out and thinking about what is the career, what is the life that I want to create.
I love that. When I was leaving the corporate world, I thought that I wanted to do marketing for a different industry. That was my idea. You know, how you started the yoga teaching. I was like, I think that I've just been in real estate marketing for so long. I want to try something else. So I started doing marketing for a life coach, which is very different, was very in line with what I liked, the self development, all of that. But then a year and a half in, while wearing all kinds of hats between the marketing and the sales and the program coordination and all of that, I realized that I actually really enjoyed the real estate marketing. Like that is something I truly love. And I think it's very creative. You can do so many things with it. You work with different brands, you work with, especially in development marketing that I focused on. So all of that, I was like, yes, I think I'm ready to come back. And that was the comeback of the agency. I loved what I was doing, but it's really not where I want to go. So I had to leave and I restarted with the real estate, which, you know, that was the best decision I made. But at the same time, as you said, that ladder is definitely not lenient. There is always ups and downs. And if you make relationship, and it doesn't even have to be a career relationship, it just friends and family, and somehow you get connected with these people and those people, and that what makes you who you are, and that also helps you with your career and opens up doors that you didn't know would open up, right?
Yeah.
So how did the definition of success changed after you left corporate and opened up your own business?
It had to change. It forced me to change, and I was very frustrated at first. I really had this expectation of, okay, I have this big career, I have these contacts, and it's going to be bing, bang, boom. I'm going to make exactly the same amount of money. I'm going to work less. And hey, that might work for some people. And I think, over time, I've been able to afford myself some flexibility, but it was not that way. And I think what it defines my success now is the impact that I have in supporting others and the relationships that I have and the people that I work with. I say a lot to young people, who you work for is much more important than what you actually do. And I'm at the point in my career where it's who I work with, who I choose to work with is much more important than what I am doing. So I am seeking something completely different than when I was in corporate. In corporate, it was like, get the title, get the accolades, get the money, build the team. Yes, I love team. I was very much community driven in my corporate career, but you have a little less control over who you choose to work with. And that's a big piece for me now, is making sure that, the clients that I continue to work with on a long-term basis are going to be a good fit. So that's the biggest change, I think, is valuing my time, valuing my energy, the people that I'm working with, and really wanting to reach out to more people. That's what I'm defining success as now.
Beautiful. So, what advice would you give women who've done everything right, but still crave for something more?
Do something wrong. I mean, if you've really just done everything like a perfect formula, the perfect recipe, sometimes you got to change up the recipe, add in a little spice there. That's my personal experience. I didn't have a traditional experience. I didn't get the MBA. I didn't go to the Ivy League school. Once I got a CMO role, I asked one of my CMO friends, I was like, should I get an MBA? They're like, why? You're already a CMO. So I didn't have a traditional track, but I would say there are some things that I did that were a little bit more traditional. If you look at my LinkedIn, you're like, okay, it kind of makes sense. But don't be so afraid to make mistakes. I think we take ourselves so seriously. And like you had shared some of the redirects that you had in your business. I've shared a lot of redirects that I've had in my life, that it's okay for something to not work out. And also, if you're doing everything right, that kind of in my mind tells me that you haven't taken a big enough swings. Like, every person that I know who's done something truly great and had a great career has had something that my mentor, Stuart McMillan, tells me is called a mulligan, which is a term in golf where it's like you hit one so off, like it's just such a bad hit that you just don't count it. So like you got to make some mistakes. You're allowed some mulligans every once in a while as a non-golfer, but that's what that means.
Yes, I did not know that term. I do not play golf, but yes, I love that. I think that
Yeah,
that's
we gotta come up with another one that's like more applicable to us. I'll work on that, or if you think of something, let me know. But yeah, we're allowed a mulligan. That's his term, so we're borrowing it for now.
So you teach women in marketing how to use AI as a creative amplifier. So how did you come up with that idea?
Well, when I first got access to LLM, I was a very early adopter to ChatGPT, and I remember thinking, this has changed the world. Like the first chat I ever had, like my heart started to beat, and I was like, whoa, this is something. This is something. And so I just have become obsessed ever since. And I've been doing keynotes. I mean, I was speaking in 2022 and 2023 for universities about AI and kind of shouting from the rooftops, like, this is a big deal. Now, it's cool now because we've reached like a certain level of the curve of adoption where like my mom will use ChatGPT, or, some of my clients, they're already like, using it. Everybody's using it every day. So it's kind of like a Google search. But I'm so passionate about it because there is something new every single day. And this is the moment in our lifetime, right? Well, we received, dial-up internet and dot-com boom and things like that, but nothing is accelerating at a speed like the AI revolution is now. Now, AI has been around since the 50s, but let's talk about the access that we have to the tools that we have right now. So I'm tremendously passionate about it. I really want to make sure that women are a huge part of this conversation, especially in technology, have not always traditionally been a big part of the conversation. So I want to make sure that women are a part of shaping these tools.
I do not know if you came across this post from Skim, but they just posted recently that they did a study between the big AIs like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of those big names. And they did a study where they kind of applied for a job that they created. And based on the conversations that you were having with that, AI knows who you are. They know your age. They know if you're a woman, if you're a man, who you are. The AI would suggest a woman to lowball the salary ask on
Mm,
big roles like the executive roles about 100K. Isn't it
wow.
crazy?
No, but I'm sure that it's happening. These tools are predictive models. So they are predicting what is the most likely to be correct answer based on its training data and based on reinforcement. So that's the scariest thing. Like biases that exist in our human existence are going to exist and be amplified by AI. And that is why I think it's so important that these tools are being trained based on reinforcement, based on use. Now, we're talking at like an incredible scale, but the more women we have and people of diverse thoughts and diverse backgrounds at the table in the companies and using the technology, the better off we're going to be, because problems like this happen. At the beginning of AI imagery creation, all of the women's were hyper sexualized. I was talking on panels at tech conferences about this, like about how big of their problem was. There was a study where a doctor actually realized, a Black woman, she realized that AI was not able to recognize her face because it was only trained on white faces. So she actually had to put on a white mask for AI to actually be able to recognize her face. And so there's inherent bias in AI, as there is inherent bias in our culture that needs to be brought up and fought against. So it is important to also, as you're using AI, be aware of the biases, be aware of its limitations. Yes, use the tools, but this is another reason why I'm so passionate about talking about it, because people are using AI in cases that I probably wouldn't suggest that they do.
Absolutely. I've actually signed up for this new AI membership. I realized that I'm using it on a very basic level. I'm a huge AI fan and I started using it also early on when it just came up. And I use it a lot for my business. I use it a lot for personal, like traveling and recipes and you name it, right? But that being said, I think that there was so many other uses that we can do with it to simplify our processes without just using it to create a copy, which I think a
Yeah.
lot of marketers right now, we're using it just for that and not using it to the point where it can simplify how we do the search. It can help us with creative. It can help us with all kinds of things. And that membership has been like a little bit of an eye-opening right now with the agent mode and what's happening there. Have you tested that?
Yeah, absolutely. Day one. But I've already been creating agents with other tools as well. I think that the way ChatGPT just launched agent mode is very accessible. Doesn't have some of the advanced features that some of the other tools like N8N, Make, Manus, String, the Gum Loop have yet, but they will. But yeah, I think we need to think of AI as a thought partner throughout your process. But what I like to tell people is think about what you're an expert in. Okay. Think about your process. Now I want you to kind of like take couple steps back and like blow up the process and say like, how could I potentially use AI beyond the copy to streamline, replace, change this entire way that I do my job? And how can I use AI at every different step of my job? But start where you know, right? Sometimes we're like, oh, I really want to try this image creation tool. If you're not a graphic designer, photographer, like, sure, learn that when you get there, but like, think about what you really know. Work on the use cases that are important for your business right now, but you have to be willing to put in the time to disrupt your workflow because it's a little bit different, and just start getting in and play with the tools. The tools are iterative. It's practical learning. You can't just watch a video. Watch the video and find a use case. Play. That's the way that we have to do it. But we have to think about AI is changing the way we work, not just, okay, I'm going to have it help me with an email copy. Sure, everybody can do that now. So what else can you do where it's like you're great at something? How can you use AI to help you be even greater at that or streamline other areas of your business that are impactful?
Such a great point. It's really like taking your day to day. And if you know of the tool that does that, please let me know. I want my screen to be recorded, like a Loom recording of everything what I do, and then upload it to whatever the tool is and say, okay, what can you do out of what I did this whole day or a week, and how you can streamline this for me? You know?
Yeah, well, there's something called Cluely, I think it's called, which is a undetectable screen recorder. People are using it more to like ask questions and interactive. A lot of people, to be able to do this, are also wearing wearable devices that record all of your audio, and then you can transcribe notes from it. You can say, identify ways that I could utilize, amplify my work with AI through that. A simple way you can do it is with your call transcripts. So you could take the recording of this podcast, the transcript of this podcast, have AI analyze it. How could I, work on my filler words? What are some of the things I need to work on? I do that with like all of my calls. So I have Fathom, and all these AI note takers are amazing at that too. So you could say, here's the call logs for my entire day. Where am I working too hard? And what's the biggest, most impactful thing I could ask AI to help me with? Literally feed that into any chatbot of any LLM tool of your choice, and it will be able to identify some impactful ways you could start using AI.
I love that. Thank you. Yes. And I do need to work on my filler words.
Because I get real excited. They're gonna have a blast editing this. Because I will talk and talk and talk. So, it's an objective, I prompt it to be objective, find my weak spots. Like, I want to get better. So why not use AI to help me?
Absolutely. So now we're coming to a fun part. This is my favorite part of any podcast. So this is a quick fire chat questions. Okay. So what are you reading right now?
Okay, I have been lagging on my reading right now because I've been listening to so many podcasts and things, but I have Todd Duncan's Time Traps right here. That's my book that's on my desk.
Awesome. Favorite podcast?
Only one. I guess Diary of a CEO. I feel like that's the business one. Yeah, we'll go with Diary of a CEO.
A quote or mantra you live by?
You'll have many jobs, but you'll only have one career. That's from one of my greatest mentors, Thomas Houlihan.
Your best career lesson in one sentence?
It's not going to be a straight line. Ride the roller coaster.
I love it. Okay, you're so good in this. If someone wants to connect with you and learn more about work, how to work with you, how to get mentored, how can they find you?
Yes, I would love to connect with everyone on Instagram, which is at Kathleen Ross Creative. On LinkedIn is Kathleen Ross, but it will show up as Ross Kathleen. My website, Kathleen Ross Creative. kathleen.com. And I am actively speaking for corporate companies. I am actively doing consulting work in AI and in marketing, and would love to connect with everyone. And thanks again for this amazing opportunity.
Thank you so much. This conversation was so much fun. I learned a lot and I really enjoyed having you here. And that's it for today's episode of the Marketing Your Way podcast. I hope you're walking away with fresh ideas, new insights, and the confidence to take your next step. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to leave a review. It helps more women in marketing find the show and build a marketing career on their terms. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, keep building your marketing career your way.